All right, I'm here in South Lake Tahoe, and one of the first things I had to do was get some Icon meals in the freezer, along with some Piedmontese and a big old box of steak and more steak and more steak. Just showed up, and with what I'm doing right now, I just told them, don't send me any steaks that have more than like 10 grams of fat. So they're just sending me all their leanest stuff, and it's working out really great, especially with the diet that I'm doing right now. This kind of protein leveraging thing that I'm experimenting with and trying. It's working out great. And as we always tell you guys, we're not sure if you believe us or not, but steaks are tender as hell. A bavette steak is something that everyone should try to experience. It's some sort of maybe a cross between like a flat iron steak and like a tri-tip, or a flat iron and a filet mignon, something like that. Just amazing. 100 grams of protein. I think it's like maybe 16 grams of total fat. This is if you eat the whole thing. It's like a pound or something like that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, amazing steaks. You guys got to try them out.
Yeah, and sorry, go ahead, Nsima.
They're just so dope if you're like trying to stay lean or get leaner. Because I used to not think I could eat red meat and diet, but it makes the process so easy.
Yeah, and then when you say, any of the cuts that have 10 grams of fat or less, I would imagine that they can still send you a bunch of different cuts, because all of them are super lean. And then it's funny when you say the bavette is like a mix between a flat iron and, a tri-tip. That's actually a really good comparison there. But I walked into a butcher shop and I'm like, hey, do you guys have flat irons? Like, oh no, we don't have any of those. I'm like, oh, I'm looking for a real lean cut. And the guy looked at me weird and he's like, lean? No, those are not lean. I'm like, sorry. I thought you guys might be somewhat close to Piedmontese beef. And he kind of got offended. I'm like, oh shit, I'm going to go ahead and just get out of here and just forget all this and just order stuff from Piedmontese, because this is obviously not where I should be right now.
Yeah. When I was doing my bodybuilding show, I, would eat a little bit of steak here and there. Honey told me I could have steak once a day. It was, fish, chicken, steak. I'd kind of rotate them around. And, I thought I don't know. I never even really looked into it. I thought some of the steaks were kind of lean because they were kind of dry, and they were just hard to eat. So I thought a few of them were fairly lean. And I looked at the stats and I was like, oh man, that's like double what I'm supposed to be getting. I'm like, shit. Yeah. So the only thing I could do was get like, they have those eye of round steaks, but those things are terrible.
Oh, yeah, they suck, dick.
Those things suck. Like, that's not even really steak. And then I got New York strips can be pretty lean. You just have to chop that chunk of fat off. So that was like kind of one of them, but you can't even really do a bodybuilding diet and eat those.
Top sirloin sometimes kind of.
Top sirloin, you're right. Yep.
That was one I had a lot.
Yeah. And then, so we're recording this on September 18th, and today's National Cheeseburger Day. Yeah, Piedmontese hamburger patties, they're insane. I haven't had the sliders in a little while. It's been like actually kind of a long time, because I just got the bigger patties, and those things are just they're phenomenal. Like they taste like they did some weird wizardry to like season those or do something, but apparently they didn't. All they did was just put a bunch of ground beef and make a patty out of it. And those things are, dude, those are so good. I don't know if you guys mess with those lately.
Oh, I love their hamburger patties. I've been eating some of the leaner hamburger as well. The 96, I think it is 96.4.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that usually doesn't taste any good either. I do a double take at the stats every time I eat their food, because I'm like, they just must be lying to us. But I am getting leaner, so I think it's working out okay.
There you go. For more information on Piedmontese beef, this amazing, incredible tasting, lean ground beef. Sorry about the sirens in the back. Please head over to Piedmontese.com. That's Piedmontese.com. At checkout, enter promo code Power Project for 25% off your order. And if your order is $99 or more, you get free 2-day shipping. Even the cops are coming to try to steal some of that lean beef.
Are they worried about this podcast because we're going to be releasing too much great information? I mean,
potentially, yeah. They're trying to suppress us.
Frustrating. Can't talk about anything good.
Happens. Yeah. And Nsima, you had a pretty cool thought for today's episode. What you got?
Yeah, we've done a lot of dumb shit in our day. As far as like lifting and nutrition and just things that we thought we had to do to either get big or to cut or to get strong. I thought we could talk about some of that stuff because some of y'all might still be actually doing some of these things. And I also want to mention some things that I may mention. There's maybe a time and a place for it, but I still don't think it's absolutely necessary. I think since we were just talking about meat, it kind of falls in line because I used to like when I was 20, 21, 22, even my late teenage years, I really stayed away from red meat. Number one, because a lot of people told me too much red meat is super unhealthy for you. But also as a bodybuilder, I was told that you got to eat lean meats because all that fat in that red meat's detrimental and you won't be able to get big without getting super fat. So I really stayed away from red meat.
Are we hearing that a lot more in the Black community, or am I making things up?
All right. So back then it was like in the bodybuilding fitness community, but oddly enough, now that you mentioned it and Andrew's mentioned it too, you do hear a lot of that within like a lot of like rappers like Nas. I think Nas Andrew was playing a record in the gym and Nas was talking about staying away from red meat, and a lot of rappers are going vegan. And there is still this thing within some of the culture that, red meat's bad for you because, I mean, if you look at heart disease within the Black community, it's pretty high, right? And red meat within pop culture, right? And pop culture nutrition, there's a high link between red meat and heart disease and high cholesterol. So that thing is still spinning around, but it is getting even bigger within the Black community right now.
Yeah.
I sent you like a little graph. This guy was talking about dementia and Alzheimer's, which they now consider type 3 diabetes. And they showed the difference between Nigerians that were that lived in an American environment, that lived in America for most of their life versus Nigerians that lived in Nigeria. And they showed was such a massive difference in their overall health. And so I think that sometimes we think, oh, there's a genetic component to it. And there is always a genetic component to everything. That is a factor. But environmental is huge. And so I think in America, sometimes when we try to say that, fat is bad, or we try to say that meat is bad, I think we just, unfortunately, we just have bad information. Maybe eating meat very often when you don't have control over other aspects of your nutrition, maybe that's not a good idea. Maybe for the layperson that likes to enjoy a wide variety of foods, maybe it does make more sense for them to eat some chicken breasts here and there because they consume a diet that is a large percentage of maybe normally it's a fairly large percentage of fat and carbohydrates. And so you can kind of see how people could kind of get swerved a certain way. You got guys like C.T. Fletcher who have went vegan. And then, of course, when people go vegan and they share their experience out with other people get excited and like, oh, I'm going to give that a try, which I think it's good to try different things. But I personally, I've never tried a vegetarian or a vegan diet. So I can't really say on how it would work for me, but it's something I just don't think I would ever even bother to try because I am a huge believer in protein, and it just seems like an odd way to get protein, to try to get protein via vegetables when they don't really have a lot of protein in them.
Yeah, and to not get too far off track, but yeah, the new Nas album is called King's Disease, because the King's Disease was like overconsumption of literally everything, but it was like specifically about gout. And we had Stickman from Dead Prez on, and he said he got gout from eating too much meat and drinking and stuff. So that's why he went vegan. And I mean, for majority of my, whatever, since like a teenager to, an adult, Nas was like my favorite rapper. But hearing him kind of give a little bit of nutrition advice on his album, I'm like, no, like just stop, just go rap about dope shit. Like, it was funny. He was telling people like, watch your uric acid levels, get you some lemongrass. And I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, I love, like, he's, like I said, he's been my favorite rapper of all time, but it was just funny listening to that. Just like, like maybe you shouldn't be spitting nutrition advice right now.
I think nutrition might be the hardest thing to prove, one way or the other. Could you show that meat causes gout? Could you show a pretty good link? You probably can figure out many ways to at least fool people into thinking that it does. Mm-hmm. And then I would say the reverse is true too. You could probably show, hey, look, we didn't find much evidence, because they do that all the time with like eggs and cholesterol and dietary cholesterol. And I think that's one of the issues that we run into. And the topic for today of talking about these different things that we've tried in nutrition, or these different things that we've tried in with exercise. I think we try something and it makes us feel good. And as Joel Green pointed out on our podcast, almost anything you switch to will make you feel good for a few weeks. So that's something to think about, is that it doesn't matter what you switch to. If you switch to something for about 3 or 4 weeks, as long as it's not a completely unhealthy practice, you'll probably feel pretty damn good for a little while. That's why you hear most of the time people like, I switched over to trying this and now I feel great. It's also a minor change. It's not like you went from not doing jiu-jitsu to doing jiu-jitsu. It's not like you went from never running and then all of a sudden trying to run marathons, right? It's usually pretty gradual. People are like, I chopped out vegetables and I feel great, or I chopped out meat and I feel great. It's like, okay, well, let's see, how long can that last for you? And let's see how you feel down the road.
Yeah. Real quick, going back to what Andrew's mentioning about gout, right? Nas removed meat, right? But we also know, like, within, like, rappers like to drink a lot. I had a client in India, right? And he got gout flare-ups a lot. And he's like, I think it's the meat. I think it's the meat. I'm like, yo, dude, you drink a lot, right? He's like, yeah, it's hard to cut out. I have business meetings, and in these business meetings, you need to, like, you got to drink with your partners. I'm like, well, let's try to actually cut that out. Instead of cutting out the meat, let's cut out the alcohol. A few weeks later, he was like, ooh, it was the alcohol. Like, so I'm wondering, like, with Nas, is this really the amount of meat you're eating, or are you still drinking a little bit too much right now? Because drinking's a hard thing to cut out. It's much easier for, I think, a lot of people to cut out a bit of meat than to cut out the alcohol that allows them to be socially, be social with people.
Yeah, and then just to clarify, I don't know for sure if Nas went vegan or he cut out meat. That's just the title of his album. And I know Stickman was the one that, like, he's writing a book, and in that book he has a chapter dedicated just to the King's disease, which is gout, and that's what they call it. When I say they, I mean, like, that's what ancient times, like that's what it was called. So I don't know for sure. I could look it up. I know how to make sure, so yeah, I don't know. I hope Nas, yeah, I know, right? I hope Nas didn't go vegan. He's too good of a rapper for us to let him go back or let him go away from meat.
I've been pescatarian before. I did that in college. Yeah, I did that in college for 6 months during my, I think it was the beginning of that latter half of my first season. And I felt kind of weak after a while. But the thing is, you see, like you mentioned, Mark, after you switch to something, you feel kind of good for a while, then you feel kind of bad. But then also, I don't think I was doing pescatarian in kind of a stupid way. Yeah, I was eating a lot of fish. I was eating a lot of rice and carbs and stuff. But I know I probably wasn't getting enough good fats in, and I wasn't supplementing things that I was missing from, like, potentially eggs, red meat, et cetera. I wasn't supplementing a lot because I was a college student. I didn't have the knowledge to look up the supplements that I was missing, or the money to buy those supplements, right? So maybe if I did it in a smarter way, I wouldn't have felt as bad. But it was an interesting experience, to say the least. I felt weak.
Yeah, I think the
I would say, from a nutritional standpoint, one of the key ingredients from a nutritional standpoint for most people is just to figure out a way to not overeat. And so whatever way that you can figure that out, I would say that that's probably a great diet. And I don't care what diet it is. I don't care if you're vegan or whatever, because most people just have an issue with overeating. So if you can figure out a way to have a reasonable caloric intake on a daily basis, and maybe through that reasonable caloric intake that you have, maybe over a period of time, weeks and months go by, you're actually in a slight caloric deficit of some kind. So you don't really ever gain weight, or you're just flat out just maintenance, and you don't gain any more body fat. I think ultimately that's what we got to try to steer people towards. And so I think, could you fill yourself up with vegetables in a given day and avoid overeating? It's like, yeah, well, of course you can. And then from there, can you get the nutrients that you need? And the answer again is, of course you can, because of the times that we're in. You can just order whatever supplement you want off of Amazon, and it's at your house in a day. And so I just think that we try to make nutrition so complicated. And if you want to eat a couple of slices of bread every day because it fills your stomach up and you really love bread and you think it gives you good energy, then fucking do it. As long, again, whatever can get you through the day, whatever keeps you happy and excited and keeps you feeling healthy and strong and having good energy, then I think that's what you should try to lean into.
Yeah, I'm curious to know, Mark, your not beliefs, but like your take on the ketogenic diet now that you've done bodybuilding and you're currently like focusing more on protein leveraging and having some carbs and stuff, because that's probably the only diet that I did where I just completely like without a doubt totally messed up. It would be like 9 p.m. at night and I'm like looking at my Fitness Pal, like, oh my gosh, I got to get my fats up. And so like I'd have like bulletproof coffee, and then I'd just be cramping all night long because I would put a bunch of MCT oil because I needed to reach the correct amount of fat, because I'm like, oh, I run off of fat now, so I have to have that. And keep in mind, I wasn't overweight. It was just something I wanted to try, just to see what would happen. Like, I kept hearing about this ketogenic diet, and this was right before it became like a super big mainstream thing. Not that I was like up on it before anybody or anything like that, but I just remember like it was not common. Nobody knew about it. Like as far as like family and friends, like nobody understood. Like, what do you mean you can eat bacon? Like that sounds weird. But I did it horrifically wrong. Like it was so bad. Like I was under eating. All I was eating was like, butter and coffee and bacon. I did have a bunch of eggs, but now that you've done all the diets before, you were like on the war on carbs, but just looking back now, is there anything you would have, maybe like to change about the book, or like just some of the, like the thought process or ideology about ketogenic diet? Has it changed?
There's still a lot more research that probably needs to be done. But as far as I'm aware, when you talk about anti-disease, I don't know if there's anything better. Now, they haven't like, I don't know if they've compared it. I don't know if they've compared, in all fairness, I don't know if they've compared a ketogenic diet to being in a caloric deficit, being a healthy person, period. But it does appear that ketones appear like own natural benefits beyond what protein does, beyond what fat does, and beyond what carbohydrates do. Now, you can produce ketones if you're just in a caloric deficit as well. It's a natural process in the body, but maybe you're not producing as many. But I would say that, yeah, I'm still a huge fan of a ketogenic diet when it comes to Alzheimer's, when it comes to dementia, when it comes to diabetes. It makes sense to me that a diet that can reverse diabetes can reverse a lot of other diseases. Most of the experts will say that diabetes and heart disease are the same thing, primarily. There's usually some dysfunction with your insulin resistance. And so when you kind of start to look into some of that, you're like, wow, like what the hell other diet does that? And again, could you be on a bodybuilding diet and overcome a lot of these things? I would say that you probably can, but there's a lot of good research. The research that Ron Penna had done at the Keto Pet Sanctuary, where they had many, many dogs. I think they lost 2 dogs, which was 2 dogs too many for Ron Penna, but they lost 2 dogs out of, I think they had 110 or something like that dogs at this Keto Pet Sanctuary, where they fed dogs a ketogenic diet that had cancer. I apologize that I don't remember the types of cancer that they had, because the ketogenic diet is not going to all of a sudden, ward off every type of cancer that there is. We're not at that stage yet, but still a huge fan of a ketogenic diet. And if I was traveling, if I was bouncing around from spot to spot, it wouldn't really be possible for me to utilize this. It wouldn't be possible for me to utilize protein leveraging as much, because good luck trying to get low fat foods at a restaurant with meat, because they're going to dump a bunch of oil on them. I mean, you can ask them not to do that, stuff like that, but it's going to be really tough. So if I was traveling, I would probably be hammering a ketogenic diet, eating hamburger patties without the bun, stop out burger, eating omelets on the go and all that kind of stuff.
Mark, let me ask you this real quick. So as far as the protein leveraging thing is going right now, you obviously have high protein, your fats are pretty low, and your carbs are pretty low, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Now, with that happening, what is the goal with it? Are you trying to true drop? Are you trying to maintain? Like, when a person wants to think about doing this, is this a person that's dieting, or this is a person that's trying to maintain what they've got? What's the intention?
So I would say probably what will happen with me is probably the conclusion that I'll probably come to. I mean, I'm kind of just experimenting for the moment. So basically what I did was, after reading a lot of Ted Naiman's stuff and having him on the podcast and understanding his principle that it's protein versus energy. So energy comes in the form of carbohydrates and fats. Protein just isn't a great energy source. And so when you start to look at things that way, then you can say, okay, well, I need X amount of protein per day. I weigh 200 pounds, so I'm going to eat at least 200 grams of protein. And in this case, you can go 1.5 times above, or even 2 if you wanted to, but go 1.5 times above, and now we're at 300 grams of protein per day. From there, you can take you can kind of split that in half and say, all right, well, I don't know, 150. I could have 150 grams of carbs or fat. I can go either way, or, some combination thereof, depending on how much food you want to eat and depending on how much you move. You might need a little bit more than that. But what I'm finding is that for some of the people that have been doing this diet for a while, is that they'll usually go about half their body weight in grams of fat, half their body weight in grams of carbohydrates, and they usually go about 1.5 times their body weight in grams of protein. And then they just tweak from there, because that's usually not really necessarily right on the money for anybody. So you might have to lower your fats, or you might have to up your carbohydrates and lower your fats, or whatever it might be, to make sure that you have good energy, and to make sure the scale's heading in the right direction, and make sure the way you look in the mirror is heading in the right direction. But I think the conclusion that I'll come to is that this isn't really necessarily a diet, something that maybe I'm not sure if I'll use it the rest of my life, but it's a leverage. It's like a lever that you can pull to gain some leverage against hunger. And so I probably will utilize it in some sense the rest of my life, but not all my meals will probably always be like this. There'll just be times where I'm sure I get bored of it, and I'm just like, hey, I want to do a keto diet. But even if I go on a keto diet, there'll probably be a couple times a day where I'm like, well, I'm just going to have a thing of protein. I'm going to have a protein shake with 50 grams of protein in it to augment this meal, to bring that protein up a little bit higher. So some things to keep in mind with protein leveraging. It's not really just an abundance of protein diet. It's a high percentage of protein diet. So that means that in order for it to work properly, you can't eat a lot of other macronutrients. So in order for it to really work, like if you're really, really heavy, if you're obese and you ate straight protein for, multiple days on end, that would be like it's called a protein sparing modified fast, where you're kind of fasting because you're not giving your body any real great energy source. It would be nearly impossible to only eat protein, but you can get, really low fat amounts. We've talked before on the show, though, how it's not advantageous to cut your fats too low because you can run into hormonal issues and things of that nature. And so you'd have to be, you'd have to be very cautious with that. But it still would be an amazing way to lose a lot of fat, but maybe your dick wouldn't work.
Andrew, are you remembering something?
Yeah, actually I am. Hate to admit it, but when I was doing my cut, man, like it's so funny, like just in the past year, how far I've come just in like knowledge of nutrition and stuff. But I remember asking Nsima, like, hey, fat doesn't make me fat. Why am I dropping my fat so low? And he's like, well, you can't have carbs and fat. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, in that case, I want more carbs. So I'm going to get rid of all my fat. Next thing I know, man, things aren't working. I'm tired. I'm like no energy in the gym. I'm like, Nsima, what's going on? He's like, well, where's your fat? And I'm telling him probably like 25 grams, of fat. And he's just like, whoa, dude, like, no. We need to get that up closer. Like at that time, like 70. And man, talk about like a tough lesson learned. They're just like, what's going on here? Like it was bad, but thankfully, that's one of the big bumps in the road that help lead to a good lesson, which is make sure I get adequate fat, because holy crap, that messes with your hormones big time.
My new name is the Dick Saver. That's me. I'm a dick saver. All right, real quick though.
Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome. I don't want to leave Andrew to leave him out dry right now. Back in 2015, when I was cutting for the bodybuilding show, I was working with Alberto Nunez. We love that guy. Now he had my fats down at 30 to 40, yo. And for the last 5 months of my prep, I had no sex drive. Like it was gone. It was. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, but that's like in a competitive setting, right? Like it was all or nothing.
No, but that's the thing though. Like this is why I thought that this episode would be so great, because nowadays, right? I'm maybe 9 pounds away from being stage lean. And I have had no indication of that happening. My drive is there, and it's there to stay. But the reason why it's there is because my fats aren't super low. Like I used to think that you had to have super low fats to be able to get lean. And the side effect of that for men is your libido tanks. And it doesn't want to work, right? But no, you don't have to diet on super low fats to get lean, and you can maintain your drive even when being super lean and cutting. It's great.
Yeah, dude. It's just so crazy. Like, cause now, like, I'm at a point where I can actually, like I woke up like Monday, like at 172. And keep in mind, like 2 weeks prior at the photo shoot, I was 166. So the goal is to kind of be around 170. And oddly enough, somebody had asked on the live stream we did with Mark Lobliner, somebody was just like, hey, how much does Andrew weigh? And like, that's such a random question. But I was like, at 172, but I know I'll be at 170 by the end of the week. Mm-hmm. So here we are Friday. And sure enough, I'm at 169. It's crazy how, like, once you do start to learn how you can manipulate your body with even just like a subtle change, it's like what changed? Like, oh, I wasn't tracking and I kind of had a little bit more. And so now I'm tracking and I'm having just a little bit less. Yeah. And yeah, dude, the fats though, that's so crucial. I hope everybody listens to that.
No, but that's one big thing that like, again, when I started focusing on bodybuilding in my early 20s, that like, and even in my teens, when I was reading on bodybuilding.com forums, all bodybuilder guys were like, first off, you should be eating 4 to 6 meals a day. You should be eating fairly low fat. Your carbs should be up here. Your protein should be up here. And that's kind of what I followed. But now I don't believe that you need to follow that, like a lot of those guidelines at all to get big or at all to get lean. Like it's just I think there are much better, more sustainable ways to do it, because the way I was doing that bodybuilding diet, and Mark, it's kind of similar to what you're doing for the show. For me, that wouldn't be like, I can't do that for a long time.
Right.
Right. Some people can. I do know some people that, like, they prep all their meals, they eat really low fat, they have the Tupperware. That's just what they do. And that's what they've decided to do for life. But that's just not me. And I just don't think it's necessary anymore.
Yeah. For me, I don't necessarily enjoy that. I don't like to, go around with a bunch of food or have to have it prepped all the time. So I just choose not to do it. But if you can make it work and if it feels good for you, I made a tweet the other day just saying, like, I think I hear people all the time saying, well, a keto diet's not sustainable, or a vegan diet's not sustainable, but it's like, who's to say? It's for some people, certain practices are reasonable for them to do. Like, look at Cam Hanes. He runs like a half marathon at lunch. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the guy's lunch. And imagine telling him, hey, that's not sustainable. I think he's been doing it for like 20 years. So I don't think it's great to place too much judgment. Now, if you're giving somebody advice and you're trying to coach somebody, that's different, because you want them to be armed with as much stuff as possible so that they can make choices that lean into the things that they're interested in and lean into their lifestyle. And that way you can say, well, yeah, we tried that a few weeks ago, but it didn't seem like it was sustainable for you. And now we're, going to move on to this other thing and see how you like that. But on the topic of the fat and the kind of the macros and stuff like that. So because my protein is so high, I think that's kind of making up for, a lot of other macronutrients that I'm maybe not consuming as much of, but I still feel like I'm consuming plenty of carbohydrates and plenty of fats. When I share information, it's always a little difficult, because if I give people numbers, they're just rough guesses, because I don't ever track anything. I don't really write it down. I might pay attention to it for a few days just so I can share information a little bit more accurately. But in terms of carbohydrates, like yesterday, I just didn't eat any of them. The day before that, I think I probably had carbohydrates a couple times, so I probably had there's 200 grams. So it can kind of be all over the map. But if I don't lift, I usually don't eat carbs, and that's not based off of any sort of real scientific thing or anything. It's just I just go by my energy output. If I felt like I had felt like I gave a lot of energy for the day, and I did things that were real physical, like when we had Mark Lobliner in, we podcasted with him and I trained with him. On that day, I probably had 200 grams of carbs or something like that. But it really just depends. If I don't put out a lot of energy for the day, then I'll probably choose to be a little bit more keto-esque, I guess you'd say.
Mm-hmm. What I really do like, first off, in terms of what we're talking about here, is, like I did mention, right, with the Tupperware stuff. For me personally, that's not something I want to do anymore. And the funny thing is, even when I was doing all of that, I wasn't enjoying it, right? So I think a good idea, and I know that this might be a little bit difficult, because if you're just starting this whole process, you don't know what you would really like. So you end up trying a lot of different things. Like, Mark, you did a bodybuilding diet. You've done keto. You've done carnivore. You've done all these diets. And because you've done all these diets, you've been able to come across, this is kind of how I want to eat. This is how I want my days to go. If I go and I do this, then you can pull on these different levers whenever you want to, because you have all of these experiences. I think now, because I've been able to, in the past, I did mess with carnivore for a little bit, right? So just eating just like meat and no carbs for a little bit. I did do some keto. I did do pure IFYM in the dumbest fashion, where I was eating a lot of bad, crappy foods and making them fit my macros. I did that, right? But now, since I've been able to do those things, I can have different foods. Like, if I do end up wanting to get some pizza on a certain day with a friend or something, I can do that. But it's not a common thing. Like, the next few days, I know what levers to pull on in terms of fasting, in terms of high protein, in terms of low fat, so that I can move forward in the right way. I have freedom in terms of eating in a healthy way because of the different dieting experiences. So maybe you need to try these different things.
And Nsima, would you say that like kind of what I've noticed, and I would like to know your opinion, is do you think that all roads kind of lead back to a bodybuilding style diet for somebody that's really trying to really get in shape?
When you say that, what do you mean?
I mean that like there's a lot of different ways to get to the same destination, right? But ultimately, you're going to have to take that bodybuilding road, you know, to get you there the fastest. Like if you're trying to not take the back roads and take the freeway and get there the quickest, you're going to end up on a bodybuilding diet. Because even when I've seen like Lane Norton kind of lay out some of his foods, or people that are in flexible dieting, or if it fits your macros, they'll talk about the Pop-Tarts, they'll talk about the frozen yogurt, and they'll talk about popcorn and all these different things. But ultimately, when it starts to get, closer to a show, you'll usually see a lot of those things removed, and you'll see the protein being spiked way up, a good amount of carbohydrates, and a pretty modest amount of fat. And they might still have a treat here or there, but it's going to be a lot less common. It's going to be pretty strict probably for 12 to 16 weeks.
Yeah. At the end road, I think so. But, you mentioned that their carbs are pretty high. I think for some people that could be totally switched. And I think it should be for a lot of people with their hormones and stuff, like cellular network. So I think the fats could be kind of high and the carbs could be pretty low. But I think one of the big things that really changed things and made things easier for me, and when we had Cole Robinson on, Cole Robinson was his name, right?
Yep.
Right. Yeah. When we had him on, he talked about all of these really, really big people implemented some fasting. Sometimes it was, some tough water fast, but implemented some fasting and lost weight like this, right? I think that habit is one of the X factors that not only allows the people that he works with, the people that you've worked with, Mark, myself, some of the people I've worked with, I think that's that X factor because it helps you not be controlled by hunger, right? So if you have some fasting where you don't feel that you have to eat all the time, and then you do use whatever diet you have, it's easier to be in a deficit, which means it's just easier to drop pounds. Because if I did a diet or if my eating style was eating all day long, my hunger levels, my cravings, with the way that I can eat, because I can eat a lot, it'd be really difficult for me to stay lean. It would be super difficult. But because I have that habit and I don't feel like I have to eat all the time, I can eat pretty big meals. But staying lean or getting leaner isn't a difficult issue. And the one thing I've noticed too, for individuals that do shows, when I've had them implement some fasting, their calories are so low. And because they're able to eat those calories within an 8-hour or whatever window, they still feel satisfied because they ate 1,500 or 1,600 calories within a 6-hour window. So they're satiated. And they're used to not eating for the first part of the day. So they're not having all these crazy cravings that you typically have when you're super lean.
Yeah. Imagine if you're just trying to solve an issue of people being overweight, and you thought about it on its most, just the most logical level. Like if you used a little kid's approach to it and said, all right, well, I determined, I talked to 10 people that are really heavy, and these 10 people said that they really enjoy eating. They love to eat. And they also have mentioned that they tried to eat better, but they had a hard time, and they ended up eating foods that aren't great for them. And then if you just said, okay, well, what's the number one thing that we need to figure out? We need to figure out ways for them to eat less. And the only way you're going to get them to eat less is figure out how to control their hunger, how to control their cravings. And that's when you're going to see some massive changes. And that's when you'll get people that come to you and they say, hey, I tried what you said last week, and I lost 4 or 5 pounds just in this 1 week. Then they gain momentum and they lose 20 pounds or so in a month, and they're kind of on their way. But they, you can control your hunger in a lot of different ways. You can occupy your mind. You can try to drink more water. You can go on walks. You can try to find hobbies that you enjoy. You can eat a lot more protein, just stuff yourself with protein. In fact, I would say that if you're not hungry for more protein, then you're actually just not hungry. I think that's a great rule of thumb to always have. I would fucking write that on your refrigerator if you're fat. Stick that on your fridge. if you're not hungry for protein, you're not actually hungry. It's just it's a fake calling, you know, and it's okay to have those and it's okay to act on those. But for the most part, that's just going to lead you to eat stuff that you probably don't need. Fasting, I know it sounds counterintuitive, but fasting will not only help you eat less in a given day, it can help you eat less over time, because you can recognize that, hey, this is just a pulse. This is just a pulse in my brain. This is just my body telling me that I'm hungry, but I'm not really that hungry. I mean, I ate just 6 hours ago, or I ate, last night at, 8 p.m. I finished off a 14-ounce New York strip. So, like, how hungry am I really at 11 a.m. the next morning? Yes, you are hungry, and you probably need food at some point in the day, but you probably don't need to react to that first impulse that you have. That first, I would say, like, when I fast for longer periods of time, like 18 hours or so, that usually hits me about 3 times. And there's studies that show that you get hit by hunger regardless, whether you eat or not. You get hit by hunger several times a day, whether you eat or not. So think about that. You could eat at 8 a.m. You're still going to be hungry at 11:30 anyway, because that's just the way the body tends to work out with our circadian rhythm and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's funny. I'll prep everything to head to work, and as I'm getting ready to go, I'm like, dude, I should probably just like pause and eat something right now, because I am so hungry, because I haven't been fasting as long as I used to. Just trying something different, trying to get more protein in my system. And I'm like, no, like I have everything good to go. Like, I'm just going to drive to work, like no big deal. And by the time I get there, I forgot that I was hungry. Like, it's so weird. And it happened like 2-3 times this week. And I'm just like, that's wild. Like, I was for sure like, yep, I'm going to eat lunch early, and I might have to go grab some more food or something, but like it's definitely happening today, and I completely forget. It's so weird. But exactly, like, occupy your mind. I'll throw on like a YouTube video or something as I'm driving, and the hunger pains go away. But when it comes to fasting, I've definitely made the mistake of fasting for a little bit too long. And Nsima, I want you to help clarify like what I was doing. But during my cut last year, I was like so pumped. I'm like, dude, I fasted for like 20 hours today. Like, I just got stuck, podcasting, photo shooting, doing all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, dude, yeah, so my calories are super low today. Like, I did good, right? And then Nsima, you were like, well, sort of. Because what's going to happen in a couple of weeks when we really start to dig, like, you're not going to have anywhere to go. Can you explain what you were just explain what you were talking about?
Okay. So a really cool thing that you just mentioned there, Andrew, was you were able to get your, I guess, cravings in control. You went 20 hours. A lot of people can't think about going 20 hours without eating food. You went 20 hours without eating, and at the end of the day, you're like, dude, I don't need to eat that much. This is great. Cool, right?
I sound like that?
No, you don't. I'm just using your very stereotypical white skater dude, right? All right. So you did that, which first off, a lot of people are like, well, that's crazy. I can't even imagine doing that. But then we're trying to cut for a long period of time. Now, this is where fasting can be detrimental in a bulking and a cutting sense, but let's talk cutting. When you get into the habit of getting to that end part of your day and you're not eating a lot, you end up eating such a small amount of calories. It could be 1,000 calories. And you're like, wow, I'm stuck with 1,000 calories. Your metabolism starts to then slow down because you're only eating 1,000 calories a day. So as you're trying to cut more, and let's say you stall, right? And you're not losing any more weight, what direction are you going to go with only 1,000 calories that you've been eating? You got to somehow do more work in terms of the gym, or you have to eat even potentially less. That's why, like, I think I had you at like 1,500 or 1,600, which is pretty low, but I wanted you to hit that so we could milk that out as long as possible. And then when you hit a stall, maybe we can drop again, or maybe we could do a small diet break and increase your calories for a little bit, but we'd have room to eat less. Rather than going, like, when people try crash diets and they eat like 500 calories a day, they drop for a while and then they're like, oh my gosh, why am I not losing any more weight? And they can't. So they have to, Lane talks about it, they have to reverse out of it a little bit and then move back down. So that's why you want your calories low, but not too low. You want to make sure when you fast that you eat enough within that fasting period, which sometimes is a pretty difficult thing to do.
I think something you guys were mentioning a little earlier is like you want to have these tools, you want to have these tricks to be able to utilize, and so the more knowledge that you have, the easier it's going to be to apply. I think when you're new at stuff, you really kind of need to follow the protocol. As Nsima has laid stuff out for Andrew, it's good to ask questions, and it's good to say, hey, like, I'm doing this today because today just ended up being different. So what do you think of that? And to get feedback from your coach. But for the most part, you really want to try to follow what your coach or someone laid out, because you currently just don't have the knowledge to shift or to move. So the thing that you think is a good idea just might not be that good of an idea. Kind of reminds me of like, when you're a kid, if you learn how to play like the piano or something, like you learn how to play like chopsticks, you don't really know how to venture out and do much else. And anytime you try anything else, it just doesn't sound very good. Sounds very out of tune, and it's just not working. And so same thing here is like you want to kind of expand your knowledge vertically. If you're on a keto diet, or if you're on the vertical diet, or if you're on a carnivore diet, lean into that and learn what that feels like. Try to learn as much as you can about it. The more that you learn, even within that system, the more you're going to be able to explore outward and expand outwardly. You'll kind of be able to go off in whatever direction you really want to. I mean, if you wanted to eat 1,000 carbs a day like a Jay Cutler, you can do that. But you better have Jay Cutler type experience or Jay Cutler type coaches to be able to figure that one out, to be able to eat that kind of food. Another thing I want to touch upon is that when it comes to bodybuilding, something they really keep in mind is bodybuilders eat a lot. They really do. They eat a lot. And when you talk about bodybuilding, especially people that are good at it, the foods that they use to get big are the same foods that they use to get smaller. They're the same foods that they use to get in shape. And this is my problem with flexible dieting, and this is my problem with just some of what gets shared out there. Yes, I understand the principle of it. I totally get it, and I totally agree 100% that you can eat some different foods. You could have a wide variety of foods. You could eat a couple slices of pizza probably every day if you wanted to really figure it out. But I think trying to get skinnier, basically, or trying to lose body fat off of foods that have pretty much made our entire society fat, and now the entire world fat, it just isn't a great way to go about doing it. It's probably dangling something in front of you that you shouldn't be like tempting yourself with as much. So that's one of the things where I'm like, I've been a heavier person. I was never like the fat guy type of thing. I was kind of fat for powerlifting, but most of my family's fat. And I'm like, no, like just not what I'm seeing. Like what I'm seeing, I can't tell, some of my relatives, yeah, you could have a slice of pizza every day and that would work out just fine. Because there also, the other thing that happens is that I think this is really not ever talked about, but I've referred to it just in a funny way as like meat displacement, but it's probably protein displacement. Like taking up room in your stomach with snacks and bullshit is America's biggest problem with obesity, in my opinion, because if you didn't fill yourself up with that stuff and you had other options, or not even had other options, your only options were meat or were protein, then you would stuff your face with that. So I think that's another thing to be cautious of. Every time you're like, oh, I'll just eat a couple of these animal crackers, or I'll just eat a couple of these, whatever that crap is that you're eating, whenever you think about that, you're taking up space for something otherwise that could be important, because animal crackers are not essential to your livelihood as much as we want to think they are.
The one thing I want to mention, I love what we're doing here, because if you guys haven't listened to it, you need to go back to the episode that we did with Nick Wright. Okay. Nick talks a lot about how he did a lot of flexible dieting and he built a lot of bad habits. And it turned into kind of a disorder for him, and he had to just get out of that zone. And Mark, what you were mentioning there in terms of it's not the greatest idea trying to maybe fit these bad foods in because they fit your macros. I did that for years, but throughout that period of time, there were days that I'd hit my macros perfectly, but a lot of the time when I would try to fit some Oreos in or fit something in, it would be so tough for me to back off. Most of the time I would fail from backing off, and I'd eat 2/3 of the box of Oreos, or I'd eat a few more slices of pizza, or instead of 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, it would be 5 tablespoons of peanut butter. And I would always be trying to find a way to fix myself because I was like, okay, well, I have fit it in. I ate a little bit too much. What can I do here? I never really was able to get out of that loop. And also my cravings were out of this fucking world. It was crazy because I was always trying to make these foods fit, right? So I'm happy that you mentioned that because I had that same experience. It was really hard for me to get lean. I never thought that I'd be able to sustainably stay lean just because I liked a lot of these foods. And it took me just getting these foods out of the house, getting these foods totally out of my diet, focusing on eating whole foods, right? And maybe sometimes every now and then, sometimes I'll have that stuff, but it's not as much as I used to. It took that for me to get to a place where I fully felt in control of my diet. Whereas when I was doing this, like when I was doing, I guess, the bad IFYM, right? Because I mean, if Lane were here, he'd be like, well, that's not IFYM. But honestly, that's the way most people are doing IFYM. Most people aren't doing flexible dieting the way you should be doing flexible dieting. And I think in a sense, maybe now I'm doing it the right way, but I'm eating way less of those foods. I don't have cravings for those foods. There's some fasting added in here and there, but it's easier for me to do. I don't need to think about it. I don't feel like I'm dieting. But what you mentioned there was, guys, go watch that episode of Nick Wright. Please go listen to it after this.
Yeah, I like how he was saying, like, it wasn't just like, if I'm going to have another bowl of cereal. He's like, it was another box.
Felt that.
So did I, because I'm like, finally, someone understands the way I feel. But you are absolutely right. And, you know, everyone that's been listening to the podcast probably knows that I've been kind of following this type of flexible dieting for, you know, the past couple of months now. And just like anybody who finds something new, they get super pumped and excited about it. And I still am. And I love the foods that I eat. But you're absolutely right, Nsima. Like the second you kind of open that gate to like, well, I could let it fit, you know, it's sort of like you allow yourself to be like vulnerable to those things. You know, like when you're fasting and you're not thinking about food, like it doesn't matter. Like nothing's going to phase you. But then the second you're like, ooh, like I think maybe I'll eat within the next 20 minutes or so, then all of a sudden your stomach starts rumbling and you start getting hungry. So, you know, it's kind of the same thing. Like, oh, I guess maybe I could make, this, I told you guys here, like I was having Halo Top, shakes and stuff. It's like, I don't do that anymore because I'm like, you're being stupid. Like, come on, man. They're delicious. They are very low in calorie, like under 500 calories for an entire bucket of shake. But now I got rid of the Halo Top and now it's under 300 or under 400 calories, I should say. So, little things that I'm learning as well. But yeah, dude, it's crazy how like when you just open that gate, to allow some of these bad foods in, it could get you. It's a double-edged sword for sure.
Well, it's kind of like, you brush your teeth and someone's like, hey, you want, some orange juice? You're like, fuck no, because you did something. You did something first to your taste buds, and this could work the opposite direction. You eat a candy bar and it's like, hey, you want a chicken breast? You're like, no, I want more candy bars. Mm-hmm. You flip your taste buds kind of inside out is the way that I like to refer to it. And I think it's the reason why that people tend to, kind of cheat on their diets later in the day, because you kind of at least know better to like, starting your day off with a donut is just not a great place to start. And that the rest of the day is going to be a shit show. Mm-hmm. If you kind of start there, not that you can't do it, you certainly can do it. But for me personally, I know it would make it a lot more difficult if I got my taste buds heading in that direction. And that's why, like, I just try not to mess with too many things that I think could get me thinking in that direction. But what I have found to be really useful more recently, I mean, I've completely eliminated like cheating on my diet at all, like over the last couple weeks. Been able to hold it down pretty damn good. And I think some of the differences for me more recently have been just bringing in some like diet sodas. Like I've been having like Zevias, and I have a Zevia tea, I have Zevia, the soda. I'll just order them off Amazon. I also use a lot of the Element products. I use a lot of those. I use a lot of the Keto Vitals, and just having those different flavors. It's just freaking awesome. You know, it's just great to have some of those different flavors. And there's been times where I'm like, man, I just really feel like something sweet, and I'll just have like a orange Zevia soda, which isn't that exciting, but to me it's a pretty big deal because I don't really drink soda anyway. So I just say whatever you got to do, and I have to agree with Greg Doucette, which we'll have to have him on the show at some point. But he says 0 calories, 0 harm. Fucking great way to look at stuff. 0 calories, 0 harm. And our boy Ron Penna, who studies cancer pretty extensively, he told us eat and drink as much diet crap as you can. It's pretty much what he told us. We're like, well, what about cancer? And what about this? What about that? He's like, you'll be fine. But anyway, I think that it is a good idea to incorporate those things if they can assist you away from otherwise, consuming a bunch of calories that you probably don't need.
Go ahead, Andrew.
No, I was just going to say just real quick, like about like tracking and, making stuff fit your macros. I think it is still a good idea to at least learn it, because like yesterday I looked at a bag of like just tortilla chips, and I'm like, ooh, that sounds good. And I just flipped it around. Next thing I know, I'm like, oh, that has, like, I think it was like 190 calories per serving. And, what's a serving? It's like, like a couple chips, right? So things like that you'll learn to kind of understand, like, oh shit, that is not worth it. Like, I'm not going to do that because it's going to mess up my entire day. But yeah, that's all I have. What you got, Nsima?
Dude, okay. So another thing that I used to do that probably all of us used to do is I used to have the gallon jug with my BCAAs in it. I would carry that around with me all the time, every single day. I never thought it was weird. I just thought I was making the gains go all day long, but unnecessary. And Mark, to your point, I think one of the biggest supplements that has made a difference for me has been electrolytes. I was using them before. We had Chris Irvin, keto guy, Chris Irvin. He was the guy that was talking a lot about electrolytes on the podcast and how much they help with performance, how good they are with fasting. And if there's a supplement that has made a big difference in terms of me being able to perform well while being fasted, not being able to cramp up, it's electrolytes. Whether it's Element, which I really dig, Keto Vitals taste really good. Having that, especially when fasted, like I can drink that. And if I was feeling like I wanted to eat something, it kind of goes away almost immediately. It could be partially because of you're getting a different flavor, but also because, you're sweating, you're getting some sodium, potassium, magnesium in. You're probably mixing up being hungry for potentially just needing to hydrate and being thirsty, which rather than just drinking water, right? Electrolytes will actually hydrate you. That's been one of the biggest supplements that's kind of been another lever for me to be able to pull. So it's dope that you mentioned that. It makes a big difference.
Yeah, and water will actually dehydrate you too. If you drink, you can kind of drink too much water. You shouldn't be drinking so much water to where your pee is like completely clear all day long, all the time. So it's just something to kind of keep in mind. I don't think under most circumstances that people really need like a gallon. Might be a little excessive, but I guess it would depend on each person. But I also know that you can teach yourself to like really feel like you need a ton of water. And I don't think that's great either. And Cole Robinson touched upon that on our show, where he was just like, a lot of people drink way too much water. It's kind of hard to figure out the exact right amount. But usually, like if your performance in the gym is good and you feel pretty good otherwise, usually you're okay. I would just say, like, make sure you specifically drink some water every day, like just flat out water, because I think that we're drinking coffee and tea and soda and things like that, and we're probably not really actually drinking much water at all. So just make sure you have some, but you don't need to carry around a gallon with you.
Yeah, and I'd say the Element electrolytes are definitely the best ones I've ever had. What's amazing, so like I'm kind of on the cheap side, so I'll actually just mix like a big like a cup or shaker cup of water with like some other BCAAs, and I'll throw Element in there as well, and I just keep refilling that all day long. And I mean, people are not salting random foods. Like we'll salt like sweets or whatever, and I'll salt my BCAAs. And in this case, the salt from, or the sodium from Element makes everything just taste even better. It's so weird. Like I never would have thought that adding salt to like literally everything would make it taste better. But being able to get, I think it's like 1,000 milligrams or something like that in each packet, and the flavored ones are only 10 calories. It's dude, seriously, like everyone needs to go try these electrolytes. They're amazing.
Yeah, it's 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 potassium, 60 magnesium, and like, dude, I used to cramp up quite a bit during jiu-jitsu, especially towards the latter end of a session. And I was thinking, maybe it's just because I'm fasting too long. Maybe I got to eat some extra food tonight so this doesn't happen. But ever since I started using electrolytes before every single session, I don't cramp anymore. No matter how much I go, no matter how much I sweat, it makes a very big difference. So if you're a powerlifter, a bodybuilder, a performance athlete, doesn't matter if you're fasting or not, this should be part of what you use, because a lot of us bodybuilders don't salt their food that much. That's kind of a trend within that, right? And they do cramp up a bit if that's the case. So it's super damn useful. It's super useful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Element products, just so people know, they are salty. I mean, they even like kind of brag about it. It says it on the side of the package. And so some people might find them to be salty, but just be aware of that. Like they are salty. I actually enjoy the taste of them. Sounds like you guys dig them too. They have unflavored ones, which I think some people are like, well, why would they have unflavored? But as weird or as funny as it sounds, you can even use the unflavored ones, and you can use them as salt. You can use them, you can put them on a steak, or you can throw them in with whatever your favorite, whatever your favorite protein shake is. Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's a good way to add some potassium and some nutrients to your meals. Now they also make some weird flavors. Now they have like some sort of spicy one.
Yeah, like chili something.
Yeah, chili something or other. And they have a chocolate one too, which the chocolate one is really good. I had that a few days ago mixed with some Slingshot protein, and it was freaking awesome. So anyway, I think you guys should give them a shot. I have to do another podcast in a little bit, but I think next episode that we do, we should kind of stay on this same topic, but talk, a little bit more in terms of lifting, because when it comes to stupid lifting stuff, I don't know. I don't think anybody on this show has me beat. I'm sure I've done like inch on the arms in 1 day program and all kinds of stupid stuff. So we can get into that. That program is like where you stay at the gym all day and you just keep eating and you do curls in between, basically. It was amazing. I just couldn't move my arms forever, and they didn't really, budge at all. But wow, we can get more into that on the next show. Andrew, take us out of here.
Yeah. Well, now you got the wheels turning. I'm thinking the spicy Element sodium packets, like marinating in some carne asada, like that would be insanely good, because it'd be kind of sweet and salty, and then throw it on the grill. Like, oh my God, like, yes. Okay. Anyway, sorry, I got excited. Thank you everybody for checking out today's episode. If you let us know what your mistakes are, let us know if you guys made the same ones we did, or if you took it a step further and did something even more, a bigger mistake. That would be funny. If we can all just hang out in the chat or in the comment section and talk about all the things that we screwed up. Please make sure you're following the podcast at Mark Bell's Power Project on Instagram, at MB Power Project on Twitter. And of course, subscribe here. Hit us up on Facebook and on LinkedIn. My Instagram is at I am Andrew Z. And Nsima, where are you at?
At Nsima Inyang on Instagram and YouTube, at Nsima Inyang on Twitter. Check out my YouTube channel, because there's a bunch of new Smooth Panther videos, and there's a video on the top 5 habits that allow me to lose body fat. Quite a bit of stuff was talked about in this podcast, but it's on the channel now, so check it out.
Nice.
Mark?
Cool. One more dumb thing to add into the mix, but I still actually do this, so I guess maybe I've never learned. No, I I eat all my food with a spoon, and part of the reason is like I don't want to miss out on like not getting all the nutrients in. So like I dump bone broth on just about everything too. So I want to kind of make sure I soak some of that up. But it all started many years ago when I did Dan Duchesne's Body Opus diet, and I would get like the fattest ground beef that I could, and I would eat it with a spoon, and I'd like slurp up. My brother thought it was like the grossest thing he's ever seen in his life. I'd like slurp up these like spoonfuls of fat with like each thing of beef that I would eat, because I thought, for some reason I kind of thought when I was on that style of diet that the more fat that you ate, the more fat that you would burn, type of thing. And so I didn't really understand all the principles behind it. So I figured I'd leave you guys with that. I'm at Mark Smiley Bell. Strength is never weakness. Weakness is never strength. Catch y'all later.